Hello, Eileen. Welcome
Hello.
to this episode number 26. I'm very happy that you took the time to be and talk with me about this stage of the hero's journey, which is a stage I said we often talked about it either as a very, intense moment. So I was inviting you because I learned a lot from you this last year, and you made big changes in your life several times. And I think very many people can get inspired by you, your work. And saying about you, you're having a wonderful community which is called the Wild Soul Tribe. But coming from a background of academia, where you had been working with students, right, and master students, and you have been teaching. You have a Ph.D. in anthropology and dance. You're dancing from childhood on. And I think what was really for me the point where I would love to start now is to say, when I invited you and I said, okay, this is the stage I want to talk with you about, what was the first thing that you thought about? Or do you remember what was the point where you said, wow, this is the stage of, intense moment, intense challenge, and maybe let's see what was coming up.
What comes up? Yes, well, thank you, first of all, for having me here. It's really lovely to share time and dive into this topic together. And I think my first response was, wow, that sounds like everyday business. Catharsis every day. Welcome to my life. And yes, I see it at times when we're moving through life and we're learning in a more intense pace or in a more condensed form, that it might feel like everything is shaking. It's
Yeah.
a very well used metaphor, like the butterfly in the cocoon. It can't actually come out before it's being shaken and it's completely liquefied. At some point there is nothing of substance in the cocoon, and then if the shaking doesn't happen, the butterfly can't come out. And I always feel that's such a poignant metaphor for the fragility and the beauty of the soul life, but also that it has that shaking of the foundation. And that's something that we're not comfortable with, most of us.
Yeah.
Not comfortable with and not really taught how to navigate. And it happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Maybe one time, maybe many times in our life, whether we recognize it consciously or whether in hindsight when, wow, I went through the washing machine there. Whoa.
Yeah.
So the more conscious we can go through it, the more we can normalize these stages as, becoming newly aligned, stepping into a new version of ourselves. I don't like that word, but gathering new tools and experiences and skills. So yeah, a lot of the work I do comes back to the body. And there's actually a lot of research on trauma being held in the body, but that it can be released by that same shaking that we're talking about. So I think there's a lot of integration between the mind and the heart and the body, and how we can, with conscious awareness, give more ground to that sense of shaking that I associate with the catharsis.
Yeah, and I would even say when I started with you this 30 days dance challenge, I have to say that there is a part in dancing that is like preparing us for these little, let's say, challenges, because when you start to dance and you forget about, your mindsets, and you get into the music, the movement, or without music, then there is something where you also create this, maybe not so intense, but you create a change, no, with a change of movement or a change of connection.
Yeah, and I think that's really at the heart of my work. It's called moving spirituality. And it's like exploring our spirituality in movement, but
Mm-hmm.
exactly as you say, that ability to shift from one stage to another. We're moving through something. It's never stuck or never isolated. Like even if we feel stuck, our heart is still beating, our
Yeah.
breath is still breathing. And maybe we can invite to move our little toe and just bring a little bit of movement into the situation. I know this is, if you're not used to using movement in your daily life, it seems a bit far-fetched, like I feel emotional, why should I move? But
Mm-hmm.
often we can say that emotion is energy in motion.
Mm-hmm.
So to even bypass the rational mind, you don't always have to understand what's going on to kind of bring it in movement. Okay, my body wants to make a rocking motion, or
Mm-hmm.
my body wants to slide over the ground and feel the support of the earth. I have no idea why, but let's just feel into that, feeling the spine curving over the ground, for example. And then you see what happens, and then you give space to your heart and give space to what needs expressing. And often it shifts
Yeah.
with, again, or without your mental understanding. But I believe that, I mean, mental understanding is very important, but it can also be a bit overrated. We are very oriented on the cognitive mind, and there's so much more to us.
And
Yeah.
you come also from academia, no?
Yeah.
So part of probably what you've been doing many years has been really also very concentrated on mind. And I see, as you said, no, the disposal of changing into body sensation or the shaking or the intensity is that I have to be open
Mm-hmm.
and that there might be a change in my mind. And I often see people when there's too much stuck on an idea or a belief or even in loops of thinking, especially negative thinking about themselves, then it gets really like stuck.
Mm.
And as you said, that there's that difference or even the cut between the mind and the body. When you get this together, then it's the moment when somebody really is brave enough to make this step or to look at the dragon or the problem or the shadow that the person has got in front of her or him, not to say
Mm-hmm.
now, okay, I can see that and now I can go for that, right?
Yeah, and I think the acknowledgement of fear in the face of change is really important. Like, wow, that's the dragon. Like, whoa, he's really big. Whoa, I'm quaking in my little boots. Whoa, whoa. Oh, I'm so scared. Oh my God, the dragon is here. What do I do? What do I do? What is my next step? And then
Yeah.
sort of, I went to just comes in as a little story. I went to Namibia in 2017, and it was only 3 weeks, but I had a chance to dance with some of the Kalahari Shamans, and one of their medicine is shaking. And that sense of like, so from the shake of fear or the shake of adrenaline when you'd face the dragon, maybe you can start that as a sort of powering up your engine.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I really like the small movement they do with they sort of rock the heels,
Mm-hmm.
which rocks the knees, which rocks the pelvis, and then your whole body starts. But it's a very small shake. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not an ecstatic shake that we do when we're, dancing wildly on. It's very subtle. And for me, how I recognized that movement in them, it was like powering your engine. It's like
Yeah.
starting your engine just with a deliberate shake. So that's interesting. The different, like, oh, the shake of fear. Oh, okay, I'm feeling fear. Oh God, this dragon is so big. Whoa, how can I power? How can I
Mm-hmm.
change from this fear into a state of, okay, I'm gathering the energy into my system and I'm going to use this for my next action.
Mm-hmm.
How and what's going to be my next step here?
Mm-hmm.
So do I need to talk to the dragon? Do I need to ask the dragon something? Do I need to collect something for the dragon? Do I need to find the treasure that he or she is guarding? What is my next step in this
Mm-hmm.
exchange? And now I have life force, I have energy, I have the shaking medicine, it's what it's
Mm-hmm.
called. to help me make
And
that
this is
next
what
step.
you teach also in your classes of Qi Gong, right? Is that part of, for me, it's a mixture of presence together with the movement. And even if the movement is, let's say, deliberate, but there's something which is really related to nature, related to a movement that you collect from out, from observation. It's not something artificial that you have to add, but it's a movement that continuously leads you to collect energy, right? And vitality during the exercise or the attention you put in the body.
Yeah, for me, it's not just a collection, it's also a release.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the strong things of Qigong is that it really consciously works with the breath cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So that every in-breath is an opportunity for collecting, and every out-breath is also a sense of release or an opportunity to let go. So in that sense, we can if you take deep breaths, every 15 seconds, you can gather and you can let go. And that's a really simple technique. So if you feel exhausted and you don't know how to get through your day, use your energy to gather with your mind, with your intention, with your awareness. You're gathering your resources. And the next 7 seconds, you breathe out and you let go, like, okay, I might not know how to do it, but I'm taking the next step. I'm gathering my resources. And I let go of the fear of not knowing, or whatever you want to let go of. Every 15 seconds. That's amazing.
That's amazing. That's really amazing.
Tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like it because, as you said, right? So sometimes we think when we go to, let's say, we know that one day we have to do this Olympics for a moment. If it's not coming, let's say, no, but it's not coming as a surprise. Then part of preparation for challenges is really of preparation, as you said, gathering energy, being able to release. And it's like putting motivation and this body, mind, emotion connection. Would that be, if I understood right, let's say that preparation that somebody can do easily before a moment of challenge?
Yes. And I think in a way, like when we have an exam, for example, we try and learn the material for an exam so that we show up prepared. If we have an interview, we go and we find out what the company is about and what the job role is about. We prepare. And I think basically we do that naturally, but often from I'd say from an external perspective, like this is what is expected of me. So I'm preparing to meet the demands or what's needed here. And I think one big part is resourcing ourselves in that. And I remember I had just done my PhD, I completed, and I had my first job interview for a postdoc position at an English university. And I was really scared because now when I've done this PhD and now I need to show up and see that I've, it was a kind of very formal institution, and it was more medically oriented than anthropologically. So it was kind of out of my comfort zone. And I had this tattoo in the year that I finished my PhD. And so I was like, okay, tattoo, weird. Of course, I'll cover my arms. They won't need to see it. But in fact, I was like, no, this is so much part of who I am. Yes, I will put on a blouse or a long sleeve T-shirt or whatever. But at the same time, before I went into the interview room, I didn't have my actual drum with me, but I prepared in the toilet. I remember as if I had my drum.
Wow, cool.
I was drumming with the spirit drum. And I heard the sound, doom, 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 doom. And I was literally calling all my animals, my spirit guides, my spirit helpers, including the snake, including others I work. I said, please come with me into this interview. Please, sound of the drum, come guide me, guide my words, guide how I come in. And so when I entered that room, it wasn't just, I've just done my PhD. I came with this whole, this presence of my friends, my teachers, my company, I did get the job, even though I wasn't the best candidate for the job, but there was something that was just a click, and those kind of things. How can we resource ourselves, even though we don't know what the interview situation would be about exactly? How can we nourish this?
Yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying, because especially we wouldn't go, let's say, people, if you're saying, gathering connection with, let's say, spirits, animals, and connection outside is something that we are, let's say, disconnected, right? And we were talking during the year that I did with you, the embodied spirituality classes. I learned so much about this connection of let's say, original connection and original pathway, of which we lost our way. So we're far away from it. And tell us a little bit, how was for you really this pathway of getting in connection with it, which has a lot to do of reinventing yourself and getting to where today you decided to do and to create the community.
Yeah, that reminds me, when I was preparing for this interview, this conversation, I was reading in your notes how you wrote about the burnout you had at 27.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, that's interesting, because the thing you asked me about also happened when I was 27.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
I was like, that sense of, I went on a 3-week course called Soul in Nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually on the surface looking for a topic for my PhD. So I'd done my master's qualification, I'd worked a few years. I thought, yeah, I'd really like to do a PhD, and I'd like to do a PhD in consciousness and nature, something. I had no further idea. And I went to this 3-week course, and it was really well curated. It was with a philosopher, with an ecologist, and with a shaman. And
Super.
together they
Mm-hmm.
wove this amazing, for me, life-changing experience that again really shook my foundations. Like, I grew up in a Protestant, quite scientifically oriented family where God and the sacred was up there. But mostly what was real and tangible was what we could see and touch and feel and measure and weigh. And so in that 3 weeks, I learned to speak with stones. I learned to dance with trees. I learned to make journeys to the spirit world. I made a journey through time as a carbon atom, like literally, like thousands and thousands of years journey in maybe half an hour or an hour. I can't remember. But that
Amazing. Yeah.
sense of being really you're just one particle in the very big constellation of so many things in life we don't know. And I remember coming back and locking my bike in Amsterdam after the course. And I thought, wow, there is really no difference between the lock and my bike, between the rack I'm locking the bike to, between myself, the earth. There's just this sense of oneness.
Yeah.
And it just kept swirling in me and strengthening and landing. And sure, there's times I lose it, absolutely, but it's like a muscle that you train. The more you place your awareness in this kind of I don't know, world where everything is alive with
Mm-hmm.
spirit or life force or mind or conscious, however you want to call it, then the more animated it becomes.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I also remember the first pizza I had after that course. It tasted like orgasmic experience. Like, I could taste the wood that had fired the oven and the smoke. It was just starting salivating now by a body memory of, well, it's nearly 20 years ago now. No. So yes, that was the start of my journey of
Yeah, thank you very much, because it's interesting. I sometimes receive children coming to sessions who are really afraid of situations that they think could happen, or situations that they feel, and part of my work is really also to tell the parents, well, trust the child, what she's saying, trust what the concern is about. because sensitive people feel so much more than what we think is or not is not, no? And I think this is one of the big challenges I think a lot of people are facing nowadays, no? That, as you said, it's shaking our foundations, and it's shaking like a lot of concepts we have been building up. You know, as I said, catharsis for me is this mind altering possibility that for a moment I can really get out of that and think, wow, there could be more options of whatever I think could be, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there are moments where we are on a clear path and gathering wood for the fire, like we are learning tools and skills. But there's also moments that it takes us by surprise, that we go like, "Whoa, what just happened?" You know, and that's often when we face illness or loss or experiences that we're not really looking for, but they can equally catalyze a change in our mind, in our consciousness, in our way of being.
Yeah.
And again, I think we don't really have tools. We're not really taught how to go and grow through that. Don't know if this is a good moment to mention the ectopic pregnancy I had.
You're very welcome to do so.
Yeah, so there was it's 4 years ago, and I fell pregnant unexpectedly, and I was in a new country, so I was outside the normal healthcare. So I knew I was pregnant. I thought I miscarried at some point, but I didn't, and I was in fact still pregnant, but that wasn't diagnosed. And then I got this feeling of like, well, something is not quite right, and I was in that process of trying to find a gynecologist when I really nearly lost my life.
Wow.
And literally, if my partner hadn't been home and hadn't insisted on the ambulance coming to get me, I would no longer be here. You know, so that sense, it was a real shock for my system, because I thought, oh, well, I feel a bit woozy. I by then had lost probably 3 liters of blood without knowing it. So it was not outside the body, but inside the body. And you kind of lose your reasoning capacity, and you kind of go, well, I'll just sleep it off. I'll go to bed and tomorrow I'll feel better. You know, and if that would have been the case, no one home or no one acting for me on my behalf, I would have died. And so that sense of like, wow, that's such a shock of one, not able to trust my own body in that situation, because through the blood loss, you lose consciousness. And then the very close approach to dying. And then the physical healing, the scars after the operation, the building up your strength, going out for your first walk, that's sort of covered by your leave of absence of work. So 6 or 8 weeks, maybe you kind of like, all this happened. And then that's only the beginning, because then there's all these layers of emotional healing, and why did this happen, and what am I learning from this, and what is the more spiritual meaning of this? You know, and that is in a way 4 years ago, and that was one of the things for me that tipped my decision to leave academia. It's a longer story, but that sort of near dying moment was like, what am I doing with my life? I want to make different choices in the time that is left to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was not that kind of shaking catharsis that we were speaking about, but at the same time, for me, it was a process of 9 months from the moment it happened to the moment I felt sort of click together again. And I was again working in that time, so it's not that I was off work all the time, but essentially there was healing happening in the background. And I'm very grateful that I had a lot of resources and tools to work with that. And I painted and I danced and I wrote a lot in journals. I talked to people, and but again, it's like a lot of women go through an experience like this, And hardly anyone speaks about it. Hardly any, oh, well, yeah, so you had a miscarriage. Oh, well, try again,
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind of useless advice, or, oh, you're still here. No worry, no harm done. Just get up. So how do we accompany each other also in these dark nights, in these, what is happening here,
yeah,
catharsis
yeah.
moments? Yeah.
Yeah, inclusive. I'm working also with doctors, and what I can see is if the doctor is not, let's say, also prepared to deal with these hard moments, what they do is
Mm.
just, create also that sort of shell which doesn't enable them to digest and to see what is happening during, the day and the people and the pain and the fears. And so it's like a domino, right? As I say, we
Mm.
we we leave this moment up to different layers, which then create all the time the disconnection. And this
Yeah.
is very painful. And even, as you said, even as friends, we are not prepared how to be with a person that is going
Mm.
through such a process, no? And we don't
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah.
And then it keeps something being on your own, which is really painful and
Yeah.
it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the gifts of looking at the hero's journey consciously, that all of us go through these journeys
Mm,
in our own way. And for the one, it might be the loss of a limb or a separation or a burnout or a health issue or losing your job. Anything in life can spun us in such a place. And then so that for ourselves, we have the invitation to harvest as much of the wisdom gifts, I call them,
mm-hmm.
from this harrowing experience. And then what to do with it is not just for ourselves, but it is for our communities. So, well, this is something I lived, and I can be by your side if you live something similar. So,
Yeah.
if it's a mental health or a loss of a person, or, there is so much expertise in all of us. And not in a sense like, oh, I've been through this, I know exactly what you need to do now, because that
Mm-hmm.
never works. But to be alongside someone, like I've walked here too, I know a little bit of what you're going through.
Yeah.
And I think those are really valuable skills to nurture in ourselves and each other, to be that companion or witness for each other, to kind of hold the torch of hope when it's really dark, and to kind of go like, you're not alone. I'm here
It
with you.
helps. It helps us also to look at something. If you're not alone, as you said, if somebody's holding the torch, you go further,
Yeah,
right, in the
yeah,
dark.
exactly. Yeah.
And I think it's the idea that, or that the, let's say that the principal motivation we both have about creating communities is just enabling that people get the tools to be able to hold the
Mm.
torch, or to be the one who said, let's go one step further, because we deeply need it.
Yeah.
And there's something so cut, let's say, on a medical level, on a physical level, as we said, the mind, we cut them from body. And if we don't know what to do with the shaking, instead of asking somebody else and say, have you had something similar? We just keep it on our own, and then we hide
Mm.
it. And as we said, also the spirituality, we hide it. No, it keeps like something all the time inside, and it doesn't allow people to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, or grow slower, or grow maybe, when a tree is growing, but it can't fully express. So there
Hmm.
is a wall here and it needs to grow in a different shape because so yeah, I think growth will always happen, but we can help each other grow in a more,
Yeah,
what's the word, symmetrical, more conducive, more effortless way. I mean, I don't think growth needs to be painful, but sometimes it is, but we can make it as effortless as we can.
yeah,
Yeah, growth is, I know some people are so afraid of growth because it means change. And a part of our psyche often says, I like to stick with what I know. The devil is better, than the one you don't. So that's I'll keep the status quo, even though I'm unhappy or I'm not satisfied or I'm really hurting or my health is really bad or, whatever. We accept that situation because the change is scarier than living what we have. And I think that too is something that we can help each other with, like keep asking the questions, keep encouraging each other. Sense of you can do it, you're not alone.
Well, and the chance also because you're offering now, that vulnerability when you're talking, about, taking off your mask and saying, this is what happened to me. And I remember many times, I mean, my skin was always like a chronicle, I wouldn't say disease because it was an imbalance. And I remember when I was little, it was like, put some cream on and you have a psychosomatic state. And I was always, when I was little, I was thinking, psychosomatic, what does it mean, right? It was like, oh, poor her, she's got, and everybody was agreeing, saying a psychosomatic, illness. And yeah, you were like, okay, you had the name, but it didn't help me anything because I did not know. And many years, I remember it was like that state of, she's not okay, she's too sensitive, she's always crying. In moments, emotional moments, and the skin, you have to take care of how is your skin. So everything was about this, and I was labeled in that sort of she's the one with the skin because it was obvious, right? That either you had it on different parts of the body, or it was more obvious or less. And it was very much about, so if you want to teach classes, you have to take care of your skin because it looks horrible. Nobody will want to work with you, so it was like something that was like a sort of mask, but I couldn't take it off because it was all the time there. And what was beautiful for me was to see, as you said before, to be able to ask the right question, like saying, what is it for here? What is it to teach me? What is behind only the labeling or the point of view that you can see? What is below, right? And with the time, it was like, wow, it was discovering, being able to touch, to perceive, to feel that the skin has this absolutely strong character of perceiving what is not visible, right? And either you touch it, and I made out of it my work, touching people, touching illnesses, imbalances, but also that being able to feel that there's something more, or there's an elephant in the room, these things that somebody else doesn't want to talk about, no? So I think it's interesting also to maybe we need more time to arrive to that part of passing or transforming in one sense or the other, and maybe it's very little different, let's say, new versions in between. So it's not always a big, as you said, but to be able to look at these different parts and say, no, I don't look away, or I find there's a connection in between. I think for myself, it was really useful, and to see that each time also you meet new people who give you more information about it and make you learn more about it. No, so it's that also a nice place of learning, even in that moment you don't see it so clearly.
Yeah, I see that as like a soul necklace or a spirit necklace, that you have different gems or objects or little things that remind you of an experience, and then your life is this necklace, and you gather new experiences, and they show you one step at a time, one experience at a time. More about yourself, more about, oh, who am I? Oh yeah, this is also me. I understand more about my skin now, or I understand more about my dreams now, or this experience opened me to a deep longing for this or that, being with the ancestors or being with the land, or this this experience helped me to feel whole in myself, you know, this ceremony I did, you know. So it's like a treasured necklace of life experiences. Yeah, that can be, I think there's a difference between soul encounters and soul initiations. And I think we have many, many, many soul encounters that are incredibly significant for our, you know, knowing of ourselves. And perhaps we have one or two, maybe three of those kind of wow initiation moments, like, wow, life is not the same anymore after. But it's
So
also
you would
nice when
say
it
that
is.
you would say the encounters is like the little moments of something where you learn, and the
Yeah,
initiation is like the
yeah,
big. Uh-huh,
yeah.
okay.
Like an
Okay.
encounter or a conversation or an experience or insight or synchronicity or, you know.
Yeah.
And those can be longer too. I remember the time before I got the snake. It was a month of deep dance with 4 different aspects of my personality, which I placed in a circle. And every night I would be dancing and I would be writing from the place or from the voice of one of those, and they would be in conversation. And at some point, you know, some of them couldn't stand each other. It's like, oh, but you always, and there was these inner voices inside my head. And I was like, wow, what's going on here? There's an inner war going on here. And one was disconnected and the other didn't care. And so at some point I got stuck and I thought, what's happening here? There was something missing in what I call the constellation. And then it was actually during a walk, and I walked past a tattoo shop, and I saw the image of the green snake jumping in the middle of this
Wow.
constellation. And the moment that happened, it felt like all of these characters, they went like, oh, thank God. Now it makes sense. So this was a month of dedication. It was like, what's going on? I wanted to know more about something in my psyche. It was not just seeing a poster in the supermarket or in the cinema. It was dedication. It was commitment. And then it was this insight. And I never ever thought would have a tattoo ever in my whole life. And a week later, I had it done. And again, it's like this. I've never been so sure of anything. It felt so right, and it, is a process of listening and showing up and doing the work, and also receiving the harvest of it, because I do feel this marking of the body. For me, it has a special significance and a special connection to a spiritual lineage. It also feels I'm receiving so much back. So that putting in the sweat and the tears and the dance and the frustrations and the laughter and I don't know what's going on here. Wow, thank you. The receiving of this, work, that's precious too.
Yeah. So you would say that there's in your life these moments where you're really committed to something and say, I want to go for a new version, or I want to dig into how is the composition of this old version for something new to emerge or to thrive. Would you say that this is the strongest point for yourself?
If you phrase it like that, it's not so much wanting a new version of myself. I think it's more being tired of the old story. As in, like, something, I've gone over this loop so many times now. If I don't change anything, I'll listen to this tape in my head again and again and again. So what can I do differently? I have no idea, because this is what I know and this is what I've lived and this is normal, isn't it? So then there is a question of like, no, okay, so I am really struggling with this in myself. What is needed to look at this? Or how can I better understand? And then a process like this, I love ritual, as you know. So to kind of show up in ritual, and that aspects like I'm committing to doing a month of that diary writing with these 4 parts of my personalities. And I'm doing that every night. I've done other rituals of 36 nights of dream practice, for example. So every night I would speak to myself in a mirror with a mask on my face. And this is an amazing lucid dream technique from Sergio Mahanya. And it's like you look in the mirror at yourself, but you're wearing this mask. So at some point there is a disconnection between your own voice and what you see in the mirror, which helps you open up the old stories. So I made a list of 36 topics that I wanted to address. 36 nights I sat with a mask in the mirror in the bathroom for 36 minutes. That's something you can play with. I mean, it's not about the numbers or the length, but it's about the commitment. And then you dream, and in the night you ask for guidance around that specific theme. So these are things that you can, there's so much tools online and in books that you, if something speaks to you, try it out. You know, okay, I'm struggling with this. What kind of creative, mad, wacky method can I employ to, I don't know, make new brain patterns or shake up the old or loosen the old neuron connections and make new ones, you know? And I think creative ritual, that is really very powerful in those situations.
Yeah, that's what, yeah, and I this is what I learned from you during the whole year and still learning, is just there are many options, and to look at something and to try it out and not being afraid of trying it out. And if there's something that resists, just to look at it and say, okay, what and why is it resisting, right?
Yeah.
So it made it
Yeah.
really easy. So I can highly recommend. And anyway, we will put your webpage below and so that people can reach out. Just for maybe closing the meeting of today, I could continue hours and hours, and maybe we will have more chances to do so. If there's something that you would really say, what was for you important to decide about, you know, this challenging moments, if you would even talk to old versions of yourself, what would it be that is for you, as you said, not only the tools, but important to look at or to be even to develop more as a quality, to be able really to say, I want to shake me out of the cocoon?
Well, I think asking the question is the most important thing, because that will start the change. Like, you're tired of something. I want to shake myself out of the cocoon, like you say. Wow, what can I do to honor this without projecting a specific result? Because that's also something that the mind then likes to do. Oh, well, if you just do this and this and this and this, and then you'll get there, that'll be fine. So the courage of asking, the courage of stepping into the unknown. And I think a lot of us have resistance to discipline, but I think this is really good for the ego and for the soul to say, okay, we're going to try this for a week. Like every night for a week, I will do this. We're not going to change this in the middle. We're doing this for a week. It's not the rest of my life. A week. Surely I can try this for a week. So something that feels realistic for you, maybe a little outside your comfort zone, but not too much that you don't want to do it. And then devise a little strategy to help you encounter the question. And that is, I mean, there's, like I said, so many tools: dancing, diary writing, meditating, drawing, going for a walk at the same time, at the same place for a week, dancing out in nature for a time to really be with the animals and the elements, and you know, but then choose something and stick with it. And that is also the harvest of practice. Like some people say, stick with 1 or maximum 3 practices for your whole life, because in them there is a whole world of discovery. You know, so often we do, oh, we'll try that for one time, and then I'll try that one time, and then I'll try that one time. So the kind of, you know, the discipline of repetition, the coming back, the opening yourself up again. I think there's something to say for that. And at the same time, don't choose something you really know you dislike. Like, for example, I have a real issue with sitting meditation. Well, I could force myself to do sitting meditation for a week, and then I think, yeah, just be frustrated and sore, and my body would not like it, and I would be more frustrated. So choose something that also knows suits you and nourishes you and resources you, and then commit. And then
Wonderful.
work with the question. Yes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think this is so rich what you shared, and you have even more ideas and inspiration, and a newsletter that really is about thriving. And I think people can really get inspired. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for holding the
Yeah,
space and offering the camino.
el camino
Yeah.
original.
There's that's French, and that's sorry, Spanish. Yeah,
So
you're so welcome.
we will come back to that. Thank you very much.
You too. Have a beautiful day, huh?
Big hug.
Thank you. You too.